you know, I just had my birthday the other day. I'm 70. But those areas that are prime for redevelopment, and the big housing area across the isthmus in places like Sandringham, Mount Eden, Balmoral, Mount Wellington, Point Chev, Three Kings, Hillsborough, Mount Roskill, I'd say a huge percentage of those properties, those residential houses there, are pre-1944, and they are precluded because of this. So what the...
No, that's not true.
Is that... Well, what the hearings panel is saying is, I think, the way forward. I don't think that the work that's being done, I think, is helpful. But I remember when it was put on, or came to being from the working party that worked bringing up the plan. I think that didn't help, and people said that was going to preclude or prevent a redevelopment, and I think that's probably what's happening. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Penny H.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm loath to dive into this one. It just has been such a fractious, difficult and divisive issue to deal with. But I also think that we're not necessarily listening to the progress that's been made, and I think the staff reports are pretty compelling. I am going to support the recommendations because we're not stuck back in first gear at the beginning of where we were at when this process started. And just listening to the debate, it sounds to me like some people are stuck back at the beginning of the debate. We've done a huge amount of work, and I don't agree that our staff have kind of let us down in this. I think they've worked day and night to try and identify critical heritage buildings and see them protected. B, to go through the 1944 area and look at streets that are character-filled and areas worthy of protection. We've actually got some areas that have been increased in their protection, and that's kind of left out of the narrative. And we've also got the ability, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Pirrett, as we go through this process, we can continue post-plan to pick up some of these areas with plan changes if required, and that's been signalled. The work that's been done, and I'm on page 27, you know, we've identified additional special character areas and refined the overlay. You know, we've actually added to the area that's been covered, and rather than having a one-size-fits-all, you know, everything pre-1944 is special, some of it's simply not. I think we've identified the areas in the city that we genuinely want to look after, and you can't have it both ways. You can't increase in density and protect every 1944 building. Otherwise you spread out into the paddocks and fields of Auckland, and we don't want that either. So
30%.
Somewhere something's got to give. And you know, I love old buildings, and I am old. And you know, somewhere,
what?
somewhere, well, I would not quite, I think the sort of sentient museum monuments, I think whatever they are, you know, I think we're all ageing, but it doesn't mean that we're necessarily fabulous. And I think the same goes for buildings. So I'm happy to accept these. I don't think it's wholesale destruction, and I do think care and attention has been applied.
Oh, very good. Councillor Wayne.
Sure. I'd like to support Councillor Lee and some of the other councillors that have spoken on the subject. These old buildings, they're part of Auckland's soul, its history. They're incredibly important. And it's not just the house, it's the trees that surround it, it's the whole sense of place, and its neighbourhoods as well. It comes down to timing. We know that there are, I think, 78,000 odd properties that have been approved through the special housing area process. We know that at this point in time, right now, and going forward, there's more than ample opportunity for apartments to be created in Auckland. What we do need right now is we need some time to schedule these properties, and we need some time to examine and protect this heritage. And a number of them may go, but we don't know that right now. So the precautionary approach is the appropriate approach to take. And Mike's right. We're giving up a whole lot in terms of intensification in Auckland. We're doing the right thing, but that is also going to dramatically escalate value. And that means that the development community will home in on a number of these locations, and they'll just cart them away, and they'll be going out to the countryside, wherever they put them, and the sense of place and the heritage in these areas will start to diminish quickly. So I certainly support this, and I think we should all support it. It's an important measure that we can take right now to save our heritage.
Yeah. Okay, actually Penny has got a bit of explanation that she wants to give you in terms of where we're at in this discussion.
So in terms of what you see up on the screen, that is not a recommendation that applies to this discussion. So the only recommendations that we put up on the screen, and as I think Mr Mayor has said through this process, we're learning, so we will change this approach for tomorrow, were only the ones that we were recommending rejection of the panel's approach. So the conversation that we're having is around A, which is on page 30 and 31 of the agenda, and in that we have recommended as staff that you accept the removal of the pre-1944 panel. So don't look at what's up on the screen, because that's about an aspect of this report that's a bit later.
Yep.
We were not putting up recommendations to accept, but what perhaps we need to do is actually put up accept A, accept B, accept D, and we'll do that now.
People can't work it out if you don't do that. Mr Chairman,
Just
to
a
that
minute.
end, I would like to move, and I'm sure others would support me, in seeking or requesting staff to do more work with a view to have the pre-1944 recommendations in its general sense, forgetting one up there, be reconsidered.
Here.
Mr Chairman,
Yeah, just, you can understand that that is the general idea in terms of enabling that to have a vote. And so what we're going to do is prepare that.
the council has to be consistent in its approach.
Councillor Lee, that is
Has to
something
be
that-
consistent.
yeah,
If you
but that
make
is-
one rule or one recommendation for mana whenua and an opposite one for everyone else, it's not a good look, it's not fair, it's not seen to be fair, leaving aside the intrinsic argument, which is substantial.
Councillor Lee, I do not have any difficulty at all in justifying either of my positions in the last two debates as being quite different. So, enough of that. Councillor Dick.
Yeah,
They're not consistent.
thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to support the panel's position on this, that the 1944 overlay be removed. And, you know, I'm generally characterised as as somebody who is against intensification, which is quite wrong. Because what this does, if we support or if we reject the panel's position, it actually places constraint and further burden on those people who want to redevelop their properties. And so, to some extent, for me, it's as much a property right as anything else. The ability to be able to do with your own property as you wish, I think, is fundamental to our way of life. And that's why I will certainly be supporting the recommendation from the panel. Just because a building was built before 1944 doesn't give it any special reason why it should be protected. There could be very likely buildings built after 1950, for example, that could be that warrant protection. But to me, it comes back to that fundamental right of people to be able to do with their own property as they wish, as long as it doesn't create any harm to anybody else. And so to constrain people from doing that is fundamentally wrong, so I support the panel's view on this. Also, Mr. Mayor, I know it's not being debated at the moment, but I also want to support the panel's recommendation for the retention of special character overlay for the Howick business area.
Very good. And, well, it is being broadly discussed here at this point. Okay, look, so we're just sort of getting something up that will give us an opportunity to vote in specific terms with regard to each of the A, B, C. Yep, thank you. Let's just talk generally about the rest of the panel's positions and the council officers' thoughts.
So in terms of B and C, they are both recommendations by the panel to apply a special character overlay to areas that the notified version of the plan did not have a special character over. So the first is the Howick business area, and that's referred to under B on page 31. The panel is recommending that there should be a special character overlay over the Howick business area. The officers are recommending that you accept that recommendation. For C, it's about the removal of a precinct from Puhoi, but placing a special character overlay on the Puhoi area. So that is also accepted by staff. We are recommending you accept it. The third one is on page 33, which is D, and that is recommending Hill Park, Manurewa as a special character area general, both residential and business, and Pukihana Avenue, Epsom as a special character area residential. Neither of the Hill Park, Manurewa was not included in the special character overlay in the notified plan. Epsom, Pukihana Avenue and Epsom was in the pre-1944 demolition control overlay. Both of those areas are recommended by the panel to have the special character overlay applied to them. And we are recommending that you accept those recommendations. The other item on page 33E is a rather technical reference. In the existing special character overlay areas on the North Shore and on the Isthmus, there is a trigger where buildings that were built before 1940, if you wished to demolish them, you had to go through a resource consent process. The panel has removed that 1940 date. So any building that is located within the area is subject to a special character overlay. Well, if you wish to demolish it, whether you're a 1920 building or a 2008 building, you will be required to go for a resource consent to assess whether or not the removal of that building will impact on the character of that area. On balance, the staff believes that we should accept the recommendation of the panel and just monitor if that causes unnecessary resource consents for buildings that were built more recently. And then the last thing, which was the original rejection that the officers were recommending, relates to the fact in the special character overlay area, there was a lot of debate at the hearing about whether the character of the areas that were protected by that overlay were around the historic heritage character of those areas, the historic character of those areas, or whether they were just special character for amenity values. The council's case has always been that they are representative of both aspects in the special character overlay. The district plan provisions that are recommended by the panel supports that approach and retains most of the provisions that we had put forward in our case, including character statements that talk about historic character. For those to be supported, we need in the regional policy statement an objective that talks about the historic character of these special character areas. And what we are rejecting is the fact that there is no such policy at the RPS level, even though the panel has recommended district plan provisions that do have character statements about historic character. So it's a technical matter. It's about that vertical alignment. If you have provisions at one level, you need to track it back. You can't track anything back to that particular objective. And we believe it will strengthen the special character overlay if we reject the omission by the panel and put an objective back into the RPS.